Teacher Professional Development at Macmillan, and I have been itching to do this talk since last ISFL. Why, might you wonder? Am I mad? I want us to look at what happened in ISFL, just checking in the room, who was actually at the conference last year? Okay, great. And did anyone attend a session in teaching frameworks? One. Does anyone in the room work for Equals? British Council? Okay, a few. And Cambridge English? Damn, there's no one I can get up here to do the presentation. I knew we were being filmed, and I tried my best to wear a top that would ensure we wouldn't get filmed. I was hoping it would jump, but it hasn't worked because I've been told it helps me be spotted. So as I wander around, I'm actually helping the cameraman rather than helping the camerawoman rather than myself. But anyway, let's proceed. I thought I'd just start by showing you the frameworks and tell you in a snapshot what they are. At the end of the session, I've got a Padlet that I'll share that actually has links to all the frameworks. So I'm not going to go into massive detail. It's just a snapshot. So the Equals framework was developed with funding from the European Commission, and it was designed to go across 11 different countries. So not just English language teaching, but Spanish language teaching, French language teaching, Italian, and so on. And it was really interesting. They used schools, state schools, universities, anything from primary right the way up to university. So they covered a wide remit of language. And it's been very rigorously tested. This version that's available online has been through about 50 drafts. So luckily it's there, it's quite robust. Equally, the Cambridge English one, Cambridge English is similar to the eGrid, whereas the eGrid has 6 levels, Cambridge English has 4. It's got 36 divisions of those 4 levels. It too has been through an awful lot of drafts. It has about 200 institutions fed into it as it was being developed. And crucially, I would say, it was developed by teacher training material. So they looked at the assignments of CELTA and Delta and others to look at what you need to do at every particular level. And that's how they developed their what they call their teaching framework. And then there's the British Council one. And the British Council one has these 12 rings, and you work your way in towards the centre. Theirs is interesting because it doesn't look at just English language teaching, it looks at teaching maths, teaching science, teaching geography, so it teaches a lot of disciplines, not just English language teaching. And again, they've done it from primary up through to university level. It's interesting, they released a statement in the beginning of this year that looked at what they have in common. I've just highlighted the differences. What they have in common is none of these are linear, which is the other reason why I'm wearing this top. Teaching competences isn't a straightforward thing. It's got lots of patterns, lots of divisions. It's not one leads to the next, to the next, to the next. So you can have what's called a jagged profile. You could be an orange thing here, and you could be an expert in another area. It will vary depending on your experience and the areas of your competence. But that was last year. We need to step way back to about 2006, where the European Commission actually targeted all the ministries and actually said to them that they wanted to make sure that Europe's 6 million teachers have the essential competencies they require in order to be effective in the classroom. Not only that, they tasked the member states to revise and strengthen the professional profile of all teaching professions. And this resulted in frameworks that extended way beyond the LT ones. As you can see, it went over stateside as well, and Bali, so it's quite extensive. They are in common use. Now, we've got the frameworks. What do we do with them? What do we use competences for? This is a workshop. So this is my first task to you. How many of you are on Wi-Fi, if at all? I know it's been intermittent in the conference. Okay, if you are, you might like to try the activity online by just clicking on this Padlet, and it's activity 1. If you're not, don't worry, with a partner, what I want you to do is just decide which ones apply. So a set of competences can be used for, do you think it's just 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, or do you think it's a combination? So I'm going to give you just a minute with the people next to you to just decide. Does it work?
I need to be close.
Oops.
Sorry.
Trying an experiment there, Will.
Struggling a bit.
Is it?
No, that's because of the phone, not because of yours. Yeah.
Great. And it's activity 1. Okay, that was a long minute. Thank you. I'm going to come back to that answer later. So please store it, and we're going to go through a little bit more, and then we're going to reevaluate and think if we have the same answer further down the line. Okay? So the next thing to do is, again with the same partner, I want to see if you can come up with a definition of what a competence is. And again, it's a quick definition, maximum of 20 words. What do you think? So again, I'm going to give you about a minute. Oh, and sorry, those of you that, Padlet is activity 2. Okay, you've got about 10 seconds left. Okay. I'm now going to take us on a little journey back in time. Here's my time machine. We're going to step back in time to 2001. There are a few people in the room that were actually teaching with me in 2001, so do feel free to correct me if I say anything wrong about those times. It was a little bit of time ago. I was teaching at Oxford House College. I was, spot who they are. Oxford House College was a teaching college and a teacher training college. We did the CELTA, the Delta. Before then it was the Trinity courses, the CTSOL and the TSOL. We had overseas teachers of English language courses. We had Oxford House College Club that had speakers from publishers, and people who had a good talk at IATEFL would be invited to talk to people to extend the remit of IATEFL out to people in London. We had regular teacher professional development sessions, so it was a real hub and an area where it was good for teachers to be able to come in, brush up their skills. It was quite transient. People were either progressing on from being a teacher to being a teacher trainer, or a teacher into being a DOS, Director of Studies, or they were just learning and then going on to another centre to teach elsewhere. So it was a real mix. And one of the things, I was speaking to one of my ex-colleagues earlier today, and one of the things we loved was the staff room, because the staff room was the hub of where you could exchange ideas. So if you had a problem like, oh, my student's not doing something that I just don't know what to do. I've read the book, I've been to an IATEFL conference, I've seen things, it was before the days of the web, so you couldn't go online and check. So you were having to ask each other, and you could just chuck out a problem, and there was someone in the staff room that would be able to help, or at least have a good go. And we had a grammar guru, and we had a prawn guru, and, you know, there was a number of people there to help us. And even if people didn't know, they were able to give some sort of answer. Not only that, we did observations. We had quite a few. We assigned new teachers a mentor. We observed teachers in their first year of teaching, but also way beyond, right into experienced teacher trainers. We did things called flying observations. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah? Do you want to shout it out, please?
You've got walkabouts, which is when you just walk around and have a look through windows. Flying observations, you just pop in, pop back out again.
Yeah.
Look at the setup and
Yeah. Or just sometimes just sit in a classroom for 5-10 minutes and just soak up the atmosphere. What was working? How were the students feeling? And I just did it across, say, 20 classes that we had. We would get a moment snapshot of how the teachers were, how they really were. It wasn't an observation done for the purpose of that person sitting in the room observing. We also had, in the staff room, things that people hated me for when I was a Director of Studies, I think it's fair to say. We had to have weekly plans, you know, what a nuisance I was asking people to produce it a week ahead of time, or a week ahead of time, the Friday before they went in and taught the next week. We also kept accurate records of, see, these two know exactly what I mean, those of you who can't see in the front. We had displayed adverts for the what teacher professional development session was coming up. We had records of who had done what session and when. Records, lots of things in the staff room. And then in my office, I would try and amalgamate all of this information and go, right, based on the observed lessons and the feedback that I had from the students and the feedback that I had from the teachers, what am I going to do with my teacher professional development programme for next term? How am I going to support my teachers? Who am I going to send to IATEFL next year? Who am I going to send to a conference outside London, perhaps even overseas? What am I going to do with my teachers? Those were the questions that we would go through all the notes and the records to find out. Well, if I take you on to present day, the grid can do it part for you. It's really nice. You can go online, and once you've got past the first 4 bits where you put in your experience, whether you're cell to delta, how many years you've been teaching, where you've been teaching, the hours that you've taught, etc. You then go into saying where you feel you are on the scale. How competent do you feel you are with your methodology knowledge? How confident are you with digital media? And as you can see here, I thought I was fair to middling. You then can get your Director of Studies or your mentor to do the same exercise. And you can see in certain places, they thought I was better. So maybe that's a time in an appraisal, in a feedback session, you could analyse and say, how can I make that teacher more confident? Then in this section here, you know, you can look at how can we get that up a notch? What do we need to do to help bring that person up and help them develop? So, if we come back to the definition, of competences, I've got stuck to the floor, that's why I got stuck. If I go back to the 50s, the true definition of a competence was the ability to do a task properly. And this, Robert White, actually analysed all professions. He looked at what you need to be, what skills do you need to be a doctor, what skills do you need to be a lawyer, what skills do you need to be a teacher, and came up with a rough profile. If you look at the Macmillan dictionary, it says it's a skill needed to do a particular job or task. But I don't think it's just that. It's not just that moment in time. This one actually comes from a law firm, but I think the most interesting bit for us is this. The ability through inquiry, observation and participation is the thing that really shows you're competent in an area. It's not a tick box. It's what you do with it and how you use it in the classroom that counts. And indeed, this is brought up further in the European Commission, when they say in their statement, it's also the ability to reflect critically on one's own and others' practice. So again, you're not just analysing yourself, you're also looking at other people and seeing what they are doing and how you can improve. So you can see that the competence is not static. Maybe you had that definition, maybe you didn't, but it's something to think about. So if we come back to these frameworks and you just have a little think with your partner, do you want to change your answer at all, or are you happy with it? And again, it's activity 3 in the SurveyMonkey on the Padlet if you're interested. Okay, I'm going to just do a show of hands. My rationale for this, I had to change computers just before the start. So I was going to show you what the results were of the SurveyMonkey, but I can't do it on this on the IATEFL computer. But I will display the SurveyMonkey results, which is the Padlet activity, in my Padlet after the conference. But right, so out of these, how many of you, if you think 1 applies, put your hand up. If you think, and we'll go through. So how many of you think 1? Okay. 2? 3? 4? Interesting. 5? Okay, great. This was the reason I was itching to do this talk from the moment of IATEFL last year, because this was the area that everybody thought. And in actual fact, that's the least reason you would use them. The main reason is to help teach professional development. It is not the stick to beat you with. It's not the stick to say, oh, you're at this level, you're tough, you can't get your pay. It's not anything to do with that. It's designed since 2006 for the development of teacher professional development. Sorry, question?
Well, why do you look at it as a negative? Look at it as a positive. You're rewarding people for achieving competencies or improving their competencies. Or having the competencies. Yeah.
Well, this is what I thought as well, but in the sessions that were presented at IATEFL last year, it wasn't how people saw it. So I wanted to start with the positives that I view. It's the ability to say, you're here and let's get you to this point. And how can we get you to this point? And if there's a bit connected to your teacher pay, well, so well and good. But it's not the be-all and end-all, and I think that's what I'm trying to say. This bit. I think it's a case that you can adapt this to suit your own purposes. If you want to use it for your teacher professional development, your individual teacher professional development, you can. If you want to suit it for your institution, looking at your teachers, is also possible. It is up to you. But I think the key thing to remember is it's not just a snapshot. It's not that one moment in a teacher's career. It's a continuous motion of looking at that teacher. So we'll forget that. And I'm going to take a quote from George, because I attended his conference, a session at his, in the English Management Conference the other month. And I like this bit that came out from the Chartered Institution of Personal and Development, which is saying it's a systematic updating and enhancement of skills, knowledge and competence throughout the professional's working life. So again, it's not that one moment, it's a continued moment. It's fundamentally about setting objectives for development and charting your progress towards achieving them. It's about where you want to be and how you get there. So if we look at Reynolds' map of developing competences, you have that initial stage, which is like, help. I don't know what to do. I'm about to use prawn. What? But you get out, you read something, you have a look, maybe you look at a bit from Adrian Underhill, maybe you see a snippet in a conference, and then you think, I'm just going to have a go. I don't understand it fully, but by doing it, I might develop my understanding. The next stage is you really get going with it. It's not just that little forry. You start with your class, and some things will work, and some things won't work. That's fine. It's absolutely fine. In fact, you'll learn more from your mistakes than you will learn from getting it right. You eventually develop that best practice for the way you want to do it. So you might have been starting off with pronunciation, you weren't very sure. You eventually get to the point that the pron that you're teaching in the classroom is right for you and it's right for your students. So you have your sound practice. Relative mastery is when you take that situation, and maybe you've been doing it with your intermediate students, and you decide that you're going to try it with your elementary class, or you're going to try it with your business students. So you're taking what you know and you feel quite comfortable with into a different context, into a different situation. And through doing that, you gradually become more of a master, but it's relative mastery. You're still finding the rules, finding the best practice. And eventually, it's second nature. You feel quite confident with it. You can take it out, you can show it to others, you can help them through it, you can say what the pitfalls are, you can help them overcome them, and you can help identify their problems even in a different context because you feel quite happy with it. And I've got these in different colours because fundamentally that's the first phase, second phase and third phase, which neatly fitted in with some workshops that we did. And thank you all, those of you that are in the room that came to my workshops and helped me work through this. We looked at breaking down the journey into simple steps. So, the first step is like little seedlings. If you think, at Ethel, you've got the flipped classroom is one packet of seedlings. Your pronunciation is another packet of seedlings. What else? Second language acquisition. And you put those little seedlings in the pots. You give them a bit of water, you look at them, you gradually help them grow. You might need to give them a little bit of fertiliser, but you're gradually letting them grow. You have to give them a bit of tender, loving care. And in this stage, it's about raising awareness, reflecting and developing understanding. Not all your seedlings are going to survive. That's okay. You're trying, and you're trying to learn through it. The second stage is you've gone on to the point that if you're in England, it would be an allotment. If you're overseas, it might be just a garden that you're trying out. And here, you've got certain areas that are flourishing. You've tried your pronunciation in the classroom, it's working really well, you take it to the next level. You've got some other ones that are not doing so well, and they may need a little bit of fertiliser. You might need to re-examine them and find out what they're doing. Do they need to be given a security blanket? Do they need something to protect them? So in this stage, you're experiencing, engaging, experimenting, and reflecting. And in the last stage, you might have a big garden centre where you're showing someone else the roots, and you're helping other people make their plants flourish. And in this stage, you're guiding, you're facilitating, you're integrating. Now it's interesting because these three phases that we established in various workshops before we looked at the frameworks matched up very neatly with the equals framework. And our phase one fitted the development phase one, phase two, and so on. And you can find a detailed breakdown in the equals framework for language teaching and development, which is also on the Padlet, and you can come back to that later. So, we've got the competences, we've got the development phases. What do we do with it? And this, to me, is the most interesting question, because it's all very well having these snapshots, it's all very well having the tools at our disposal, but it's making them work that's crucial. And inspiration can come from funny places. I was passing through Nice Airport on my way to the Equals members meeting, and I was just waiting to pick up my suitcase, and I looked up, and there was this poster of these jumping fish. And I thought, ooh, that reminds me of something. I know, it's mad, it's crazy. I did this when I was a teacher as well. Couldn't listen to a song without thinking how I'd bring that into my class. Now it's competences, so it's even worse. But we've got phase one, phase two, and phase three, if you imagine. And what I like about this is the fish jump. Okay, you're not always here. It's impossible. You start off here. I'm very, very competent at using an overhead projector in class. Oh wait, the DOS has brought me in a flipped classroom and an IWB. I haven't used it before. I'm here. I've got to start learning how to use it again. So for me, what used to be thought of as being linear isn't linear at all. It's very much circular, and it comes back. Sorry, I hope that doesn't do your head in. And it's best to look at it more like this great spiral. And with a bit of experiential learning, we can make it. So there's various features in experiential learning. So it's not just about acquiring the knowledge, it's about what you do with the knowledge. It's all very well and good us sitting in ISFL, listening to loads of talks, going, great, this is great, taking lots of notes. If you go back to the classroom or back to your school and it just sits in your drawer or sits in the side cupboard, you're not activating the knowledge, you're not really making it work for you. So the first bit for me is it's really experience the activity, doing it, performing, trying it out. In the second part, it's reflect on what went well and what didn't work well. Share the results in class. Experiment. Compare what works for you with what works with another teacher. Process the information by discussing. Again, this has come back to the staff room where everyone was sharing ideas. Generalise, develop your best practice, what works as a general common core, and apply it to other situations. And you can start this at any point. It's can come in. So based on that, sorry, let a photo be taken. A few tips within this model is avoid the obvious. Don't do the safe bit, what you know works. Try and do the bits that you haven't done before. Try something new. Experiment. Don't feel you have to absolutely read up on it. Read a bit, attend a bit in a conference, and then go and do it. Don't make life difficult for yourself. I'm never, in a month of Sundays, going to reach to the top. I'm not even going to try. But I can open the door a little bit. And don't keep your experiments hidden in the basement. It's all very well and good doing the most marvellous lesson plan or the weekly plan, but unless you go into the classroom and actually use it, it's pointless. So, for example, a little experiment that I did, that I was reminded of the other day, was back in ITEFL 2001. I presented the idea of how I wanted to get my elementary students to speak more. And they were all business students who were worried about their level of English. They were worried about showing themselves up against their colleagues. You know, they were an executive. What do you mean I can't speak English? Other people in the class were so bored of doing the same thing. Hi, my name's Kirsten. Hello, my name's Kirsten. Good morning, my name's Kirsten. It seemed to be a bit constraining. So we used a bunch of wigs, scarves, hats, lots of different props. And the students picked up these different activities and they gave themselves different characters. And I recorded it and we tried things out. And here, my elementary students used lovely language. This guy was actually saying to the other one, "What lovely hair you have." And they were absolutely, really, they were using all of these nice pieces of language naturally. And I played it back to them. And they didn't believe that they had actually spoken that much until I let them hear the recording. So we experimented and tried it out. And then over time we took it out into other classes and we used it in a courtroom situation to make it come alive. Sometimes the students told me what they wanted to do and we experimented. And then when I got to ITEFL, I made all my participants do it too. And we had mirrors around the wall and people put on the wigs and the hats and we did it. Because I think by doing, it becomes more memorable. It wouldn't, if I just told people about it, they'd have thought I was crazy. Maybe you do. But believe you me, it did work. So, with this, I just want us to quickly look at, we've shown how you can use these competencies in terms of traversing them and what you can, how you can make them work. But what activities do you think you would use with your teachers to help them demonstrate that they've got raised awareness, reflecting and understanding? What kind of things could you do? What would you do after reading the article to show that you've taken on board some of that information? For example, you would... Any ideas?
Talk about it. Tell someone else about it.
Yeah.
Write about it in a blog.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Answer questions and so on. You get the idea. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes with a partner to come up with a couple of activities for each one of what you might need to do. And again, it's also on the Padlet if you want to try the Survey Monkey. Okay, I'm going to... Sorry, I cut you short, I know, and I'm sorry. We'll come on to them in a minute. I just wanted to remind you that, again, the first stage is about that smorgasbord. You're trying out different things. Second one, you're getting home, you're trying it for yourself. You're doing experiments, developing your best recipe, and then you'd eventually have a dinner party where you're prepared to show it to others. We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. Nice quote from Drury, who is a progressive educator, believing in the reflective learning and thinking, but a good 50, 60 years ago. There's nothing wrong with the old pedagogies. They're great and we can certainly utilise them. And again here, he says failure is instructive. The person who really thinks learns quite as much from his failure as from his success. And a little example of this is, you'd think by now I would know how to go to the toilet. But on my first day at the conference, I was in the Morsig PCE and I nipped to the loo. And as I went in and shut the door, fine. As I left, the door trim, which I hadn't noticed, turned around and flicked me on the nose. So I then went back to the Morsig, and for the next couple of sessions I had a bit of red on my nose, which I didn't realise till someone said to me, "Oh, you've got a bit of pen on your nose." So you're never too old to learn from your experiences, and you constantly have to revise and consider where you are. So these are some of my examples of the phases. I'm sure you've got others that are great too, so do please put them through the Survey Monkey if you've got a moment. I think you can read an article and comment on it, answer a questionnaire, do a quiz. I love these for phase 2 because I think that's where it really happens. Reflective observation and reporting back. You can reflect on yourself by having a video in the back of the classroom. I practice my talk in front of a mirror in the hotel because I'd seen a video of my other one and I was doing this all the time and I was really trying to contain myself. I probably haven't. Do peer observation, but for a specific purpose. Don't just go in and sit in the classroom. Why are you going in there and what are you doing with it? Analyse the lessons learnt. Don't just do the observation. What have you gained from it? What are you actually going to try in your classroom afterwards? Share lesson plans across from one teacher to another. Participate in online discussions, or as Scott said to me the other day, to even be confident enough to add something onto an IATEFL blog or an IATEFL website. Respond to a situational activity. You get given a problem. What do you do with that problem? How would you solve it in class? Think about doing that in your teacher professional development sessions. And then for phase 3, Record your class. Show other people how you do it. Do record your favourite bit and get other people to invite other people to look at it, to learn from it. Mentor a colleague. Do a teacher professional development session. Go and talk at IATEFL. These are things that actually chart how you're traversing a competence, how you're moving through that level. So it makes that snapshot much more meaningful. If you've got your teachers and you're saying you're at level 1 and they want to get to level 2, these are kind of activities that you can help them see what they've done, just as you would with a Common European Framework with your students. And they develop a profile of their best writing, their best listening. It's quite similar. So the last bit, and the bit that you've probably been wondering why you've got red, yellow and blue on your chairs. Blue's first in the alphabet, so that's for phase 1. Red, second in the alphabet, is for phase 2. And yellow is for phase 3. You can do this with pairs. I'm going to show you an activity. And if you think it belongs to phase 1, you hold up the blue. If you think it belongs to phase 2, hold up the red. And if you think it's phase 3, hold up the yellow. Are you ready?
Oh, yes, we know.
Okay. You hear something interesting at IATEFL, you take notes and you share it with other teachers when you get back to the school. What do you think? Excellent. The majority is right. Because you're sharing it with the others and you're getting a chance to discuss it, you're going into phase 2. Okay, next one. A teacher goes on to One Stop English, reads about a text tool, and downloads a lesson plan. Okay. You're quite right, it's blue. Why is it blue? Because they've done a lesson plan and stopped. They've done nothing with it. Next one. You download a lesson plan about using mobile phones in the classroom, try it out in class, but it goes wrong. You then discuss on social media with colleagues what happened and you solicit advice. Is that phase 1, 2 or 3? Ooh. Okay. To me, it's more phase 2. If I'd done that consecutively a few times with different classes and I developed my best practice and then I shared it online, those of you that held up the yellow one would be right. But you need to take it on a bit further. Okay, another one. You try out Skype for the first time to teach remotely. You gather feedback from your students and analyse it with a colleague ahead of the next lesson. Yeah, the one that's put up a red going into yellow is actually right. Bit of a cheat, that one, but you're already taking it in, you're analysing it, you're really going it to the next stage. Okay, there's only 2 more of these. The teacher enrolls on an online course, watches some input, and then takes part in an activity where you have to relate methodology to your own teaching practice. Okay, we've got quite a mix here actually this time. It's an interesting one, this actually. I think it's more 1 than 2 because you're really at the stage where you've just been learning. You've just had that very gentle foray into the activity. You've not expanded it beyond what you've just learnt. And the last one, you give a presentation at a conference on blended learning. Session is well attended, and you have a Q&A session at the end, allowing participants to discuss what works for them, and then you help feed in their answers. 1, 2 or 3? Yes, those of you that got the yellow up are perfectly correct. Okay, this was just a snapshot. There's many, many more situations. I just wanted to show you a few of what you could do with the phases. I think the most important thing to remember is a little bit from Dr. Seuss. TPD might come from organisations. Teacher professional development might come from organisations like IATEFL, TESOL. It might come from publishers like Macmillan. It might come from your director of studies, your senior teacher. But nothing really happens unless you engage, unless other people. So I like this. You have brains in your head and feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. And I think the teaching competences combined with that almost gives you a sat-nav through teaching. So I hope I've shared some ideas. If you've got questions, please ask in a second. And if you want to access the whole of the session, it's available on the Padlets. And those of you that can't read this, there's the web link as well. There's the presentation slides, links to the Equals, British Council and Cambridge frameworks, along with a joint statement from those three. And I hope that's given you some ideas. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.